Hello and good morning, everyone. I'm presenting the results of a floor pen study, which was run late last year to determine the optimum inclusion rate of barley in meat chicken's diet without compromising performance. So barley is the fourth most produced grain worldwide with an annual production of around 150 million metric tons, of which 65% is used in animal feed and around 35% is used for the malting and brewing industry. Australia, on average, produces around 8 to 9 million metric tons of barley per year, which accounts for around 5% of world's barley production. But most of that barley is exported, which places Australia in the top three barley exporters. Uh, Although many nutritionists actually feel comfortable using high barley diets for swine, for layer hens, and for pullets, but many have taken a more conservative approach when it comes to broiler chickens. And that's because of probably because of barley high fiber content, its low AME, and also its high soluble NSPs. On a percentage of grain, the arabinoxylan content in wheat is slightly higher than barley, but the beta-glucan content of barley is more than 4 times higher than that of wheat. The cellulose and lignin content of barley are nearly 2 times higher than wheat, and the total NSP is 50% higher in barley, with soluble NSPs nearly 90% higher in barley than wheat. Barley's got less starch and more variable starch content compared to wheat, which results in the lower AME values of barley, which is around 400 kilocalorie lower than the wheat AME is. So on a similar protein basis, barley's got a slightly higher, more digestible lysine and valine, but the wheat that we used for this study was a high crude protein wheat of 14% crude protein. And based on the NIR prediction, all the content of all the digestible essential amino acids in that wheat was higher than the barley values. The starch was analyzed to be around 55% in wheat and 47% in barley. The NIR predicted an AME value of 3220 for wheat and 2760 kilocalorie for barley. But we had these diets formulated to a wheat of 3200 AME and the barley AME with 2850. So the current study was designed with the objective to quantify the optimum inclusion rate of barley for different growing phases and to see if birds fed high barley diets will actually further benefit from a beta-glucanase supplementation in the feed. There were 8 dietary treatments which were designed as a 4x2 factorial layout with 4 levels of barley with or without beta-glucanase supplementation. All the diets had a were formulated to have a xylanase activity of 2440 units per kg of the feed and a phytase activity of 1250 FTU per kg of the feed. And the beta-glucanase supplemented diets were formulated to have a beta-glucanase activity of 304 units. All the diets were formulated to be isocaloric based on AME and also isonitrogenous and balanced for all the essential amino acids based on ROS 308 recommendations. Each diet was replicated 6 times with 18 birds in each pen, and on day 24, 4 birds per pen were euthanized for carcass analysis and to collect digesta. Here we've got the experimental diets, their composition, and calculated nutrient composition. Barley introduction into the feed actually changed the dynamic of the feed, and that changes were consistent across each phase. For example, if we have a look at the finisher diets, replacing that high crude protein wheat with barley increased the soybean meal inclusion in the feed. And also because of the lower AME of barley, the supplemental oil went up as the barley inclusion increased in the feed. And as a result, we had higher net energy in the barley with the barley diets, and also a lower starch to crude protein ratio as the barley inclusion increased in the feed. Getting into the results. Over the starter period and at day 9, when barley was included at 7.5%, it didn't have any effect on the body weight or the FCR. But at 15%, it actually decreased the body weight by around 30 grams and increased the FCR by 6 points. But when the beta-glucanase was added to that 15% barley diet, uh, both the body weight and the FCR were completely recovered, which resulted in a significant interaction between the barley and beta-glucanase. Body weights on day 23 and FCR over the grower period. Well, the barley diets with beta-glucanase actually resulted in around 30 to 35 gram heavier body weight, and the FCR with beta-glucanase at barley with 15% in the grower feed resulted in the lowest FCR, which was 6 points lower than the control group, which was a wheat-based diet without beta-glucanase. But again, here you can see the effect of the enzyme, both at 7.5% barley, 15% barley, and 22% barley. Body weights on day 35 were around 70 gram higher in barley-fed birds, and that was in with the 15% barley. Actually, the enzyme it wasn't significant, but had a numerical effect in increasing the body weight at 15% and at 30% barley. Again, the highest body weight on day 35 and the best FCR, which was around 5 points lower than the control group, was observed in the birds fed medium level barley with beta-glucanase supplementation. During the last week and the withdrawal period, again, birds fed the barley diets with the beta-glucanase supplementation were around 100 gram heavier than the control birds, and the best FCR, which was 10 points lower than the control group, was observed when barley was included at 30% with beta-glucanase, but barley at 37.5% in the withdrawal feed didn't have an effect on the body weight compared to the control group, but increased and didn't have an effect on the FCR compared to the control group. But when that high barley diet was supplemented with the beta-glucanase, actually both the body weight and the FCRs improved. But because of these changes were not big enough to result in a significant interaction between barley and the enzyme. Looking into the overall performance results from day 1 to 42, you can see that barley at low levels with the enzyme and at high levels with the enzymes outperformed the control birds, and the best body weight, which was around 130 grams more than the control birds, was observed at barley at medium levels with the enzymes, and the lowest FCR, which was 6 points lower than the control group, which was a wheat-based diet without the beta-glucanase supplementation. Feed cost analysis showed that the feed cost per kg of live body weight was the highest for the control group, and all the barley diets had a lower feed cost per kg of live body weight, with the lowest being calculated at barley at medium levels with beta-glucanase, which was around 6.5% lower than the control group, or 4.5 cents lower per kg of live body weight. Pellet durability index, it dropped as barley was introduced into the feed. You can see for the grower feed, it went down from around 83 all the way down to 40 when barley was included at high levels. This drop was, the decrease in the PDIs was higher in the finisher and in the withdrawal feed uh, at each level of barley inclusion, which was in the control, it was around 84 and went down to 33 when the barley was included at high level in the finisher and withdrawal feed. Barley inclusion at each level of inclusion increased distal digester water content by around 8 to 10%, and the beta-glucanase supplementation decreased that digester water content by around 4%. And that was consistent more or less across all inclusion levels of barley. Though for the enzyme, it wasn't significant, but still some numerical values dropping of the distal digester water content. There was a negative quadratic relationship between starch to protein ratio and the overall FCRs, and the lower starch to protein ratio resulted in a lower FCR, and there was a relationship between the diet's net energy and the FCR, with the higher the net energy of the diets, the lower the FCRs. So overall, in summary, replacing barley with wheat in the broiler's feed did not have any negative impact on body weight and FCR at each level of barley inclusion. And indeed, broilers which were fed the barley diet outperformed the control birds. And that could possibly be due to a lower starch to protein ratio in barley diets. And the work done by Sonia and Peter has shown that a lower starch to protein ratio can impact the dynamic of nutrient digestion, especially in favor of amino acids and crude protein, which can benefit the FCR. Also, because of the higher supplemental oil in the barley diets, we had a higher net energy, which this could have also positively benefited the birds for receiving higher net energy in the diets. And with the barley diets, we had higher protein coming from the soybean meal. And we know that the quality of protein from soybean meal is actually higher than the quality of grain proteins, because soybean meal, although all these diets were formulated to have similar content of the essential amino acids, but the soybean meal protein is better balanced for the non-essential amino acids. And also the differences in the fiber profile. We know that barley's got 2 times higher cellulose and lignin, and the higher insoluble oligosaccharides in barley could have stimulated the gizzard function or the secretion of the endogenous digestive enzymes and bile acids, resulting in a better absorption and digestion and absorptions of the nutrients. The highest body weight and the lowest FCRs were observed when barley was added at 7.5% in the starter, all the way up to 30% in the withdrawal feed. This indicates the importance of conditioning the gut early on, trying to expose the gut microbiota to any dietary changes at an early age to prime the microbiota to better get along with those dietary changes, and in this case, barley. The low PDIs can negatively affect body weight gain and FCR. Uh, Indeed, 10% drop in the PDIs is equivalent to 10% drop in the is equivalent to 14 kilocalorie drop in the feed effective energy. But here we didn't see any impact in this study, any negative impact of the low PDIs, and that could be partly because of the low stacking density that we had in this trial, or it could have been masked out by the superior performance of birds which were fed the barley diet. Barley inclusion increased digester water content, and if we consider an 80-gram excreta output per bird per day post day 35, that extra 5-gram water per 100 gram of digester can equate to an extra 1,400 liter of water being excreted in a shed of 50,000 birds in a week. And that extra moisture has to be removed either by increased ventilation or by working the litter more often, trying to avoid any issue with the wet litter. And with the beta-glucanase supplementation, yes, we need to have beta-glucanase in barley diets. It can improve body weight gain and FCR and reduces digester water content, especially if we are at birds at a younger age will benefit from beta-glucanase supplementation, or if the uh, barley is to be included at levels higher than 20% of the feed. And at the end, I would like to acknowledge and thank AgriFuture Chicken Meat Program for financially supporting this experiment. Thank you, everyone.